everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to my weekly wrap-up. Like it always is at the end of the month, you're gonna have kind of two wrap-ups in a row. So first you're gonna have my weekly wrap-up, which I believe this week I have 15 books on it. And then tomorrow you'll be getting my monthly wrap-up and I will go over my stats and then what my favorite reads of August were. This week was a bit of a taboo week. It was interesting, I'll tell you that, but it was a lot of fun, and oh, I'm so excited. If you're watching this video in the morning, this afternoon, today at 4 p.m. Central, is going to be the first live show for the Taboo Book Club that I started with my friend Tamika over at Library of Tomes. And I'm so excited because we're going to be announcing what our theme is for the month of September. And I am so excited. I love that we're doing this book club together because I read so many taboo books and I can't wait to find the people who read them with us, and I just love it. So let's go ahead and get started with this week's wrap up. This is the reading that I did from August 21st to the 28th. Yeah, or the 29th, something in there, not sure off the top of my head, but let us dive in. So this week I have been reading through the Crossfire series. So I'll just show all of these books at once. I'm not quite done with One With You. I have about 200 pages left and I should be done with it. I'll be done with it today, but I'm filming this in the morning, so we'll just have to deal with it. But all of these books were on Audible Escape, and I actually found the complete set at a thrift store last week. And this series, particularly this author, had been suggested to me by you guys. If I liked, I like the billionaire books, I like a little bit of BDSM going on. This one is mostly about a power play, and it kind of switches between the two of them. We're dealing with two characters that both have a lot of trauma. So for once, we're not dealing with the innocent virgin. We're actually dealing with a woman who she was raped by her stepbrother when she was young for an extended period of time, and she still has nightmares about it. And because of that, she equates sex with love, and so she uses sex to get love. And so she's had a lot of relationships where sex is the only thing keeping it together, and that's really been the only thing that she's valued. And then she meets Gideon Cross because she ends up working in his building. She doesn't work for him, but she works for another company that's like within his building, and they meet each other and there's an instant attraction. And so Gideon, he was also raped as a young person. He was raped by his therapist. He was raped by the therapist that his mother was sending him to for some of his attitude problems. And so he was raped for an extended amount of time as well. And so for him, he does kind of the opposite. Like, he needs sex to make him feel something, but he also hates it. The trauma these two have is heartbreaking. And I just was really sucked into this series. Like, people want to call this, it came out the time where like 50 Shades was big. It's got the covers that when you see them, you imagine them fitting into it. They're the kind of covers that like kept me from reading them because I really shied away from the book covers that looked like 50 Shades of Grey. And I regret that. I regret waiting so long to give this series a try. They go through, it's that typical kind of like billionaire thing though, like they fall for each other really quickly. They both have a lot of traumas they're dealing with. Gideon has horrible nightmares at night, and he will wake up and be like assaulting Ava, and Ava has dreams about being assaulted. And so in the beginning of their relationship, there's this horrible thing between them where he is assaulting her in his dreams and she is fighting against an assault in her dreams, and so they are like the opposite sides of each other's nightmare. And so that's something we see them continually struggle with. There's also a lot of people trying to keep them apart. There's a lot of people in each other's pasts that are causing them problems. One of these books is almost like a suspense novel, but it's just really fun. It's light, it's fluffy. I've given I gave the first one 4 stars. I gave the second one 4.5 stars. And then I've given the third and the fourth, and probably the fifth one I'll get 4 stars. There's something that happened in the second book that really kind of like upped the ante for me. Otherwise, it's been a little bit like typical of the story. Like, they fight a lot, they make up a lot, they're honestly trying to work through their trauma, like they're seeing therapists together and apart. And so I really like that about it. Like, they're not fighting for no reason. They're fighting because they both have traumas, they both have anxieties, and they're trying to work through them for each other. And is it too much for 2 people who have such similar traumas to be trying to be in a relationship together? Like, maybe it's going to be too much for them. We don't know. I mean, we know because it's going to have an HEA. But I'm really liking it, and so I definitely want to try some other Sylvia Day. It's been really fun reading it. And I like going to these series that were popular in the day, but now they're all out. I really like when a series is completely out already. I think a lot of us do, so it's fun to go back to some of these. So I'm really enjoying these, and they were fun to listen to this week. And both the narrators were narrators I've listened to before. The first 3 books are just from Ava's point of view, and then we add Gideon later on, who is by Jeremy York, and he's someone who does a lot of romance novels, and so I really enjoy his voice, so it's been fun. Then I have been reading like I said, a lot of taboo books. I've been trying some incest and step family romances, and there's just something about them that is just that next level of angst. Like, we're talking about like something you need to keep a secret, right? So the first one I read was Tortured Whispers by Danielle James. So this got me into Danielle James. Tortured Whispers is incest. It is an uncle and his niece. The niece, there is self-harm in this book on page. This girl is living with her dad, and her mother has killed herself, and she herself has a lot of self-harm tendencies. It's how she feels control over herself. When she feels out of control, she's harming herself. And then her dad's younger brother comes to live with them while he's getting his new house is being built in the same town as them. And he's actually a child therapist, but for like younger children. And he notices all of these like things about her that she's probably harming herself. And so he's really encouraging her to see a therapist. And pretty early on in the story, the father dies from a heart attack, and so her only guardian is her uncle, and there's a relationship that starts there. And it was a very good story. It was very tough to read, but I really enjoyed it. You got to be in the right mindset for an incest book, though. Although the incest wasn't the darkest part of this book. There's some suicide attempts in this book. There's an accidental almost suicide in this book. So please don't just think that the incest is the hardest part of this. Please look up the triggers before you give it a try. Then I continued with some Danielle James, and I read North, which this was a stepfather-stepdaughter romance. This girl, he was her stepfather for about 10 years of her life. She had, a pretty big thing for him. And then her mother dies of a drug overdose. This stepfather had divorced her mother and moved away. This one was interesting because she definitely still called him dad because he was the only dad that she knew. And it was really intense because she and him they had shared a kiss before he had divorced from her mother. And then when everything fell apart with her mother, so he's an artist, and the mother had sold all of his art supplies for drug money, and that was kind of his last step. But it was also, things were getting kind of intense between him and his stepdaughter when she was 16. And so he was like, okay, this is just time for me to bow out. And so it's been like a year since that divorce. And so when she is 17, her mother kills herself. She has no one else to live with but her former stepfather. And so she's still only 17. And she moves to live with him in the new town. And then the old feelings they'd had the year before start to come up. She has guilt that she's the reason he left. He has guilt that he was having these feelings, and all those things bubble up. I really liked this one. I really like stepfather romances, so this one was really good. Then I read Nocturnal Sins by Danielle James, and this was a stepbrother, stepsister romance. This is one where they've lived together since they were pretty young. It's her father, his mother. His mother dies a few months or a few years previously, maybe. He has been, I think he's a year older. So he has been going to college, I think, and he's like back for the summer, maybe. I don't know. They've always been really close. They've always they have slept in each other's rooms before. They have, she would like sit on his lap. They would, they haven't dated anyone else because they've liked each other, and now we're finally kind of bubbling up to the surface. This one was really hot, really fun. There's also drug tangent within this one somewhere. So they're not the mafia, but I think they sell drugs to the mafia, and so there's a little bit of family business stuff going on. And so the brother, he's getting kind of pulled into that, and the sister is actually I want to be involved in it too. Are you going to let me, or are you going to keep me a secret from all this stuff? So that was a really good one. Let's see. Then I read, we'll just get through all of these. I also read Hunger by Arabella Abing, I think is how you pronounce it. Yep, and that one was a stepbrother romance. This one was kind of interesting because the stepbrother isn't her stepbrother yet. So this one, if stepbrother, if growing up with them is too hinky for you, this one, they have never lived together. He is a little bit older than her. He's in his early 20s. I think he's only 22 or 23, and she's 18. And he's actually been in rehab for sex addiction. And it's his mother, her dad, and their parents are about to get married. And so when he gets out of rehab, he comes to stay with them, and it's her summer break. And so when their parents are both working, they spend a lot of time together. And her best friend, who her best friend is gay, he decides to help her lose her virginity to her will-be stepbrother, who's a sex addict. Strange, but interesting. Very interesting. Then I also read Love Unexpected by QB Tyler. This is another stepfather romance. This one I saw recommended by Makeup and Mary, and she put out a video with a bunch of taboo ones, and this was on there, and I just had to pick it up. This is another stepfather romance. He's been her stepfather for 7-ish years, and she's actually really mad because when she was little, she had a crush on him, and then he was her teacher, and then he becomes the principal of her school. But when she first meets him, he's her teacher, and she has a crush on him, and then her mother ends up marrying him, and she's mad. So this is an interracial romance, which was really cute, because she is interracial, because her father was white and her mother was black, and then her mother dies in the beginning of this, and so she's only 17, and she's still gonna keep living with her stepfather, and they never really got along because she'd had that crush on him, and then he's been her stepfather, and they just have always butted heads, and now they're the only one each other has. And then when her birth father tries to come into the picture, it becomes clear very quickly that he has ties with the mafia and may or may not be a mob boss himself, and he wants to start entwining himself in her life and kind of using his money to put control over her, and she just isn't going to have any of it because she wants to be with her stepfather in more than just a stepfather-stepdaughter way. and how are they going to hide that from her dad and from others, and like how it'll work out. This one was very fun, and it had some suspense elements in it, which were really cool. And then the last one of these that was kind of that level of taboo was called Unconditional by QB Tyler. And so this one I think would freak you guys out a little bit less probably than some of those other ones I just listed, if you're someone who gets freaked out by them. This one is this girl when she's 7 years old, her father kills her mother and then kills himself. And a young police officer, he's only 23 years old, him and his partner, who his partner is actually his sister-in-law, which is kind of cute, they find her, and she refuses to like go in to foster care, and so he ends up like being her foster dad and legal guardian basically. And now she's turning 18 and he is he would be like 32 or something, I think. And no, it'll have been 10 years. So he's like 32 and she is turning 18, and their relationship, she's been thinking about him and fantasizing about him since like puberty basically, and has always been really like, I live with this totally gorgeous police officer who he's now like the chief of police in their town, and he is really starting to like notice her too. And this one was really interesting because it starts off like right away, like they're both aware that they're attracted to each other and they need to be careful, and they've kind of raised her in like kind of like group parenting in a way. Like she's lived with him and he's like raised her, but his family has really helped. Like his mother treated her like a grandchild, and his sister-in-law and brother, they have like helped raise her, and so it's very interesting. This one also has some suspense elements to it. I don't want to say what they are, but there ends up being someone who is kind of coming after Maddie, and we have to figure out who's trying to mess with her. So this one was really fun. This one I look at as more of just like a guardian age gap, so because that's what it is. So there's no incest or step relations at all. This is her guardian, and they're starting to be feelings. So, all right, that's most of the ones that are like super taboo that way. And then I found Play Along by T.L. Swan, and I was very excited to find this, okay? So I was ordering some of T.L. Swan's books because she's one of my favorite contemporary romance authors. I love her books. I've read a couple of hers this month, and you know, she wrote The Takeover, which just came out, and I loved it. And so I was looking through her backlog to see if there was any I hadn't read, and I hadn't noticed this one before, but also it got like a new cover recently, and so I think it just stood out to me differently than it did before. And this book was called Play Along, and it is a captive romance, but different than you've heard before. So I'm going to explain it. It's not quite the same as like a Twist Me or something like that. Like this person, so there's this girl, and at the beginning of the book, this was really fun. At the beginning of the book, she catches her boyfriend cheating on her with her best friend. And so she catches them, she starts like freaking out at them, and then when she stumbles away from there, she runs into like a drug deal. And instead of kill her on the spot, one of the guys like kidnaps her instead, and they're like, well, we'll just take her away from here and then we'll drop her off at one of our other stops. And they mean that because they are on a boat. They are on a shipping container boat. And so she gets taken to this, and then the guy who took her, he took her to keep her safe because they were going to shoot her in the head. And on this boat, there is a group of women who choose to travel with the boat and be prostitutes there. Like, this is really fascinating to me too. So all the women who are on the boat, they've chosen to be on this boat. They will like make a 6-month trip with everyone and like make a lot of money being there. They either have like a couple men that are who they see usually, or there's one woman who travels with her menage. Like it's literally like they're in a relationship together traveling. And I was like, T.L. Swan, I want that book about this couple. If T.L. Swan wrote me a menage, I would be so happy. Like, I can't even. I was very excited. But our girl, sorry that I don't have names. Like, that just happens for me with all this. She obviously didn't choose to be here. She doesn't want to be a prostitute. And she just, like, this is the last thing that she wants. And so our guy, he's the big, like, oh my gosh, he's a bear. So he's a big dude, strong, tattoos everywhere. He is their, one of their engineers who runs this. And this ship, it's a drug ship. And there's containers full of drugs and different items that they'll use to smuggle drugs in. There is there is contraband diamonds on the ship, all these things. And so his plan was to take her, and then when they make one of their stops, they're going to be stopping in Bogota, Colombia, which made me really happy because I've been there before, and also freaked out because I'm like, yep, I've seen the ships that we're talking about. So that freaked me out a little bit. I was like, yeah, I've seen ships that look like this. That freaks me out. So he is kind of claiming her as his because she's really scared of him in the beginning, you know, because he hasn't explained to her fully why he took her. He's just taken her and kept her in his room. And he's like, you can either stay in here with me or I can let you go and they're gonna rape you and do what they want with you. But if you let yourself be seen as mine, no one's gonna touch you because I'm the baddest ass guy here. And so after some like back and forth, she ends up agreeing to play along. And so that's why it's called this. She talks to the other women on the boat, realizes that she has a good deal if she'll stay with this guy. And so at first they just are playing along in front of everyone. So when they're out on the deck, she'll snuggle up with him, kiss him, be seen. But eventually more's gonna go with there. This, I categorize this as romantic suspense because this is only the first half of the book that we're dealing on the ship, and then there is a lot of other stuff that happens, and it was really great. It's very unique in the T.L. Swan library because usually her books are mostly just focused on couple, and this had a lot of other elements going on. You know, it had mafia elements going on. There is a certain reason why our hero, he is an anti-hero, but there's a certain reason why our hero is on this ship. He has a specific agenda. It's not that he's this great shining guy, but he's not on this boat because he needs the drugs or he needs the things. So there's more to it. So this was great. I gave this 5 stars. I just love when an author I love, I find another book that they've written that I didn't know about, and this was awesome. I loved it. I read Defended by Golden Angel. This was just a quick, this was a daddy kink book about a sex club. This was also interracial. It was awesome. It was actually an Asian hero who's a lawyer, and he has daddy kink, and he meets this girl who he actually defends, and then they both end up at the same sex club because she goes to check out this sex club, and it turns out he's there, and he's very excited because he was attracted to her as his client, but he has very specific kinks that he's looking for, and he, you know, would never assume that someone is into that until he meets her there, and then they figure it out, and it was cute. It was quick. It was fun. Let's see. I read All Things Burn by Jody Slaughter. So I found this book. I've seen this book around. It's a newer release. I think it only came out last month. It might even been the beginning of this month. I have heard about this book, and then I heard about it on Fated Mates that Sarah McLean had read it over break, and so that made me very excited because I didn't know what to expect from this book, and then I heard her talk about it, and I was really excited. So this book is about a girl. This is also interracial. She's black, and she has a stalker. And so it's someone that she used to be in love with. He was a boyfriend, and he turned abusive on her, and so she left his ass, got out of there, and now he's been stalking her and saying that he's coming for her and he's going to have her and all that jazz. And she has tried doing it the right way. She's tried getting a restraining order, but there just isn't enough proof. She's tried doing everything the right way, and it's very clear that he's going to escalate in the way that he's treating her, in the threats that he's telling her. It's very clear that he's going to hurt her or her family very soon. The writing's on the wall. And so she makes a bold move, and one of her cousins who's has ties to the mob a little bit, gives her the number of a hitman. He's an Irish American. His name is Callum. And the only way to get in contact with him is if another client like refers you, and he is a paid hitman. And so she gets in contact with him, and they meet up, and he doesn't tell her his name for the first like good bit of the book, because he's like, you don't need to know me. But the minute he meets her, he's instantly entranced with her. So he makes up a couple of rules. Like, he says that he needs to see her again to go over more information, which he normally never makes himself this available to one of his clients, and he just keeps finding reasons to meet up with her, and they both are falling for each other. And it was fascinating. It's fascinating. And so he's not connected with the mob, but he will do hits for them sometimes. And he gets brought in on a deal, and one of the people going to be working on this deal is the man that's been stalking this woman. And so he meets face to face with his mark. And so now this whole situation gets a lot more complicated, because now he can't just off this guy the way that he was going to. There's a lot more involved. So that's all I'll tell you. This was a 5-star. I loved it. Just look at this cover. It's delicious. And it is, I categorize this as romantic suspense as well, but it definitely has some great chemistry, and the sex scenes are wonderful. That's, I think, what held me off from reading it, because it looked too much like a thriller for me. But when I heard Sarah McLean talk about it, she's like, the sex is great. And it was great. And it was a good story too. It was really fun. Then I read an arc of Breaking Her In by Brianna Hale, which is already out now. This is the second book in the court of Peverell, sorry. I keep thinking like Harry Potter, the Peverells when I say it, but this is the second book. This one was A Hate to Love. This is about the daughter of Devram from the first book, who that one was a daddy kink age gap. This one is kind of like it's a hate to love. She's a brat. And then he runs the stables where she boards her horse. And I wasn't a huge fan of this one. I gave it a 3.5, and I'm sad about it. And I talked to my friend Tamika, is the biggest advocate for Brianna Hale that you will ever meet. She is her captain of the fan club. She's all the things. And I like Brianna Hale's books too. I've read not quite a few, but I've read a few of them at this point, and I like them a lot. My biggest issue with this is that she's trying to build a whole world. Like, this is a whole, like, it's kind of a futuristic world. Not a world, but like a place. Like, it is a kingdom. There is politics. There is, court intrigue and things like that. And then these books are like under 200 pages long, or like just 200 pages long. And so there's not enough room for the super sexy romance she's trying to tell and the court intrigue. So, and I talked this with Tamika, it's like, I need her to either give on one of the things or make the book longer. Like, I need the focus to either be more on the couple or more on the world. Like, or give me more pages. Like, if both the first book and this book had been more like 300 pages, I think it would have been filled out more. Because it's also going from like, this is a hate to love, and it's like real hate. Like, they're real nasty to each other. Mostly him. He's a little more nasty than her. And then there's a spot in this book where, boop, he's like, they're all in. And like, I've read that in books before too, but this just didn't sit right, because the bricks weren't built up good enough, and there wasn't that like scenes where they're starting to like each other. It was like, I hate. Oops, she needs a husband. How about I'm the one who's it, And there was none of that, like, I'm feeling softer towards her, so I could see that. Like, it was straight up right to that. And so I don't know, I was just disappointed, and it didn't sit as well as the first one did, and I'm nervous about the next two now, because I think this world is really cool, and I think that it needs more put into it. But because of the pace of some self-published authors where they're like, I gotta get these out like one a month or one every 2 months. There's just not enough put into it. So it isn't gonna, it isn't gonna be a series as a whole where I'm gonna want to suggest it. And I think that that's a real issue that some self-published authors need to think about when they're pumping out these books that quick. Like, I want my books quick too, but when you like jump through some things, I think you run into some issues like that. All right, then I read the new release, Drive Me Wild by Melanie Harlow. I was excited and nervous about this. This is her series coming after the Cloverleaf series, which the Cloverleaf series is the series that got me into Melanie Harlow, and I was very sad when it was over. This book, like all of her series, tangentially talks about Cloverleaf Farms. We get to see Franny in this book because our main heroine in this book, she works for Franny at her bakery for a little bit in here. But this book, Melanie said, was based on, during quarantine, she watched all of Schitt's Creek. And our female, our heroine, she's kind of based off of like that scenario where a rich family like loses everything. So she's actually 30 years old and she's been kept in a glass bubble. She is a debutante. She has been spoiled, but she hasn't been happy. And it took her family losing everything and trying to force her to marry someone rich to like get their money back for her to put her foot down and run away. So she runs away from home with a car that's a piece of crap, wearing her debutante gown, which is a white ball gown, and her small suitcase. And she stumbles into town, and her car breaks down right outside of the town bar, where we have our hero sitting with his buddies, and he happens to be the town mechanic. And he offers to look at her car. He sees her in a ball gown and thinks that she's an angel. And the town sees her going into his apartment because he ends up letting her spend the night because there's no room at the inn and there's nobody for her to stay with. And so the whole town thinks that he got married and didn't tell them. And so they start sending wedding presents and all these things, and nobody's listening to the fact that they aren't married. And so she was on her way to Cloverleaf Farms to have an interview with Franny and try to get hired there working at her bakery, because she secretly went to culinary school behind her family's back. And when she was sent to school in Paris, she did double duty and like went to culinary school and things like that, and worked at a bakery every morning for like 2 years, and her family never knew. And yeah, it's just really cute. And so he is the mechanic. His family shop has been around for 3 generations, and he's being beat out by a chain of automotive places, which are doing work for cheaper, and in the long run, it's not going to help, but it's slowly running him out of business. And she, in exchange for him fixing her car and letting her, ends up giving her a place to stay, she like fixes up his front yard. She actually went to school for marketing as well as doing secret baking things, and she is like helping him revamp everything, and it's like have like an anniversary special opening and things like that. So that was a lot of intro for this book, but I love it, and I love Melanie Harlow stories. And I didn't know if I was in the mood for a rom-com, because as you can see, I was in a bit of a dark and intense role this week, and I didn't know how I would feel about jumping into this. Well, Melanie Harlow knows how to open a novel, and I immediately loved our hero. I immediately loved our heroine, because though she is that rich, girl who grew up with not a lot of problems and is a little naive, she's so sweet and just funny, and also super sexy. The sex in this book is awesome, like most of Melanie Harlow's books. It's good. There's not as much as I like in my romances, but the stuff that there is pretty hot, and the chemistry between these two is awesome. Yeah, I really liked it. Another one of her heroes that is a ex-soldier. Melanie, I feel like, only writes Marines, so it's another ex-Marine. Like so many of hers are. I have no complaints because that's my favorite branch. But yeah, it was cute. It was great. I love her stories. They make me happy. Then the last one I'll talk about for this week is I read Hate Fuck by Ainsley Booth. So this is the first book in the Bodyguards series. I've actually read the second book before because it was an age gap bodyguard book, and I was really excited to read this. And I'd heard about this couple already. So this is the sister of the character in that one, and her name is Haley, and she falls for a bodyguard. And this was really fun. This had some really kinky sex in it. This was suspenseful. There were some suspense elements going on. Yeah, it was just really fun. I gave it 4 stars. I was confused about some of the story elements in it. It's one of those that this was written as a serial before it was put together into one volume. Wow, I can't talk. So there's things about it where I feel like it could have been edited better to work as a whole story. That's a complaint I have about a lot of stories that were written as serials. I'm glad we're getting away from that a little bit. I feel like that was really popular in like 2014 to 2016, was when authors were working on really pumping out the ebooks that they would do serials. Whereas like I would just rather you write the whole story and then get it out to me. So it was really fun. I definitely want to continue this series because I read the first. The problem is this series isn't on KU, and so I don't know if I love it enough to buy them all. And I know that I got this one. I've had it for a while because it was on sale. It was only for like 99 cents, so I bought it. And the later books in this series don't usually go on sale like that. So, all right, that's everything that I read this week. I'm in the middle of, like I said, I'm reading One With You, and I'm also in the middle of Haven by Rebecca Weatherspoon, which is going great. I love that. And then I'm in the middle of another Nailani Singh book right now too. So those are the books I'm currently reading. Tune in today for the Taboo live show, and tune in tomorrow for my monthly wrap up where I'll go over the 68 books that I've read in the month of August. I won't go over all of them. I'll go over my favorites as well as what my stats are and everything. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this. I put up my videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more of them right now. Bye.